This is the SFL Today. Welcome into SFL headquarters in the Metroplex of Texas. I'm SFL Commissioner Cameron Irvine alongside our regular analyst, our esteemed analyst, Andy Hamilton. Andy, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Cam. How are you?
I'm good. Boy, we're getting off to a bit of a late start because, and we're going to start from Raleigh, North Carolina, because Carolina, I don't even know where to begin. If you missed this game, folks, Colin Northrup had a heck of a time calling the game. One of the best lines of the whole year when he welcomed Cleveland to the game at the beginning of the second quarter. I thought that was pretty hysterical. If you missed it, you missed Carolina taking out 5 weeks of frustration on the Cleveland Stallions as the Carolina Skyhawks get their first win of the day today, 61-41. Andy, how do you even describe what we just witnessed?
Insanity, Cam. Insanity is the only way to describe a win like that. I'm guessing this is what happened. Carolina saw that Vancouver put up 51 in their first win and went, you know what? We can do better than that, which is saying a lot. And they put 10 points more up on the Cleveland Stallions, and in good fashion. I mean, too, they came out right away and just started off strong. You know, it wasn't really one of those games that took a while for Carolina to get scoring, which is something that we've seen them struggle with in the past couple weeks. They just started off right out of the gate. And the biggest thing for me, 256 yards for Johnny English and 3 touchdowns. Finally, Cam, Johnny English started moving.
Yeah, English returned to greatness. Although he did get hurt, that's at least the second time this season he's gone out with an injury. But those brittle old bones, man.
Yeah, he's an old man. He's getting up there. He's about half Brewski's age by this point.
Yeah, he's really up there. How about hats off to Martell today in his first SFL game, 175 yards on just 4 grabs. He took 3 to the house, but Cleveland's got a big issue. Back-to-back games, they've given up over 50 points. Both of these teams' defenses, just at this point, have to be ruled unacceptable.
Yeah, I think the turnover margin for McWavy Jr. is something to be watchful of. The 7 turnovers getting awfully close to that 9 that we saw last week. Luckily, the Cleveland defense did a decent job of protecting those turnovers and not letting Carolina get points off them. I think that rushing yard total needs to come up a little bit. 88 yards on the ground just wasn't enough to get it done today. And the 8 first downs, that's a big one. It looks to me like the Stallions weren't playing enough down and distance. They were trying to make up all of Carolina's points right away on 1 or 2 plays, and that just forced some turnovers. If they can just settle down a little bit, if they get behind and kind of focus on, just getting to the sticks, getting a touchdown when they can, and then just piling points on top of each other, I think Cleveland will bounce back.
Well, you can't blame them, Andy. I mean, with 10:57 to go in the second quarter, they were down 42-0. They outscored Carolina 41-19 the rest of the way. And actually, funny enough, Cleveland completed sort of completed the greatest comeback in league history. They were down by 42, and they cut the deficit to 18. It was a 24-point comeback and a loss.
Yeah, it's incredible. I think the thing to keep in mind, though, is that you can only score 6 points on a play. So, you got to go get those points, and you got to try and make that comeback count. But the 7 turnovers can't help. If you cut that down to 3 or 4, we could have seen this score even closer. And that's just my opinion, obviously. But I think if you could play that down in distance and kind of keep a cleaner sheet for McWavy Jr., you might be able to get even closer to the greatest comeback of all time. But hats off to Carolina. They obviously did their work in the film room and were able to beat Cleveland in this one.
Yeah, they definitely cleaned up a lot of offensive woes they've had over the past couple of weeks. So good job there. Carolina gets their first win out of 73 people who voted in Who You Got this week. Cleveland got 52 votes. Which is so according to the SFL popularity here, big upset today out of Carolina. Well, from Carolina's first win, we go to the Alamo City in San Antonio, where the San Antonio Vaqueros played a completely opposite game than they played last week. I mean, I'm telling you, this was a 180, Andy. They went from not passing at all or not running at all and playing no defense to having a really good ground game and playing a lot of defense, as Oklahoma City did not manage to get in the end zone until late in the second half. And the San Antonio Vaqueros, like the Carolina Skyhawks, get their first win of the season this week, 23-17.
Yeah, I love it, Cam. I love it. Two teams that, were 0-4 coming into this, or 0-5. 0-5? Yeah, 0-5 coming into this week, struggling, just said to themselves, you know what, we're done with it. We're going to put these points on the board. We're going to go get it. And I love it from San Antonio, the exact opposite, running the ball. What do they eat in Germany, Cam? Is that schnitzel? Feed that man. And he took advantage of it. He took advantage of it. 156 yards and 2 touchdowns. You got to feed that gold star. I think Greg kind of listened and heard what the people were yelling at him for last week, and he put it to good use against Oklahoma City, who is kind of confusing me, Cam. I mean, they looked pretty strong against Mexico City in the first half of last week's game, right. And then they come out and San Antonio puts them down. So you're either telling me that San Antonio at 1-5 now is able to have a half like that against Mexico City, or we're all just flipped upside down on our heads.
Well, San Antonio played Mexico City to overtimes. Vancouver got a victory today, and San Antonio took them to overtime. So the Vaqueros, I'm sure, are going to move up in a lot of people's minds. And how about linebacker Shane Hornish? An SFL record, 8 passes defended from a linebacker. Incredible performance today out of Hornish. That definitely had to be mentioned. Pete Bruschi was held to 34 yards rushing. Oklahoma City couldn't get that going. Late in this game, Oklahoma City had a 4th and goal from the 9. They completed a pass to their fullback, Quinton Mantua. He was pushed out of bounds as he stretched the ball over the pylon. Officially marked down at the 2, a very close play. They turned the ball over on downs. Oklahoma City got yet another opportunity to win the game, and they couldn't fulfill that one. So incredible defensive effort there late by San Antonio.
Yeah, a tough matchup. This was the matchup of the fullbacks almost in the Renegades and the Vaqueros. It kind of shows, and I'm surprised and really impressed with the Vaqueros' defense of doing such a great job on Pete Bruschi, holding him to 34 yards. And Sam Hornish, I mean, are you kidding me? Or Shane Hornish, excuse me. Sam Hornish is a race car driver. Shane Hornish, Shan talked about it earlier in the Atlanta game, but gave him the Mutombo finger. No, sir, not today.
That was awesome.
8 passes deflected. 8 of them. That's incredible. I haven't seen that from a defensive back, Cam, much less an inside linebacker. Not even if I was playing as the inside linebacker. Great day. Congratulations, Greg. You earned it.
I want Shan Varner's Dikembe Mutombo impression as my ringtone on my phone.
I think we can do that.
If you didn't hear it earlier today in the Baltimore-Atlanta game, which we're about to get to, that was a great line from Mr. Varner. And Shan and Andy were on play-by-play and color for that game today. First time in the regular season we've seen that since, I believe, season 5, and it's the first time we've ever had play-by-play and color with 2 different people in 2 different locations, and it went off without a hitch. So we're looking to improve that and expand that here going forward, Andy.
Yeah, I'm pumped. If you are interested in doing color commentary, it's super easy. Shan literally, I think he just logged on and then turned his microphone on. That was it. So if you're interested, don't feel like you have to do a bunch. Contact me on Discord. Andy Hamilton is my username, @Bengals1fan. And we're going to start a list, and we're going to get this thing going because, Cam, it was a blast to have Shan on the call.
And Damon Simeon, I think, wants to get on board. I think owners and coaches and people that have really good in-depth knowledge of the SFL can add another level of commentary to these podcasts. So we're excited about that future. Well, Carolina got their first win of the day. San Antonio got their first win of the day. Would St. Louis get their first win of the day? No, unfortunately.
Not quite.
At Tallahassee, of course, St. Louis had probably the toughest challenge of any of the 3 winless teams coming into the day. facing those mighty Pride. That's really tough to beat at home unless you're Queen City, of course, which they seem to be able to do that at least in the playoffs anyway, whenever they want. But St. Louis just kind of ran into a buzzsaw, and J. Calvin Kim, after negative yardage last week in Atlanta, coming off of a short week, boy, somebody lit his fire because J. Calvin Kim was at it again. 271 yards and 2 touchdowns as Tallahassee rolls.
Yeah, Calvin Kim did his work on the Tallahassee side of the fence. You talked about a buzzsaw, Cam. That was actually in the Vancouver game that you heard the buzzsaw. But back to this game, 44-10. Yeah, you talked about it. St. Louis had the huge task of trying to take down the Pride. I give them a lot of credit for the effort that they did put forth. The turnover margin in this game was actually one of the closer points. The passing was interesting for me for St. Louis, 106 yards through the air, only 65 on the ground for Adam Fennell, who had such a great game last week against Queen City, looked so promising for St. Louis. I know the staff in St. Louis might be frustrated with this loss, but I think it's one that you just chalk up to Tallahassee playing so well. I mean, when you have a team that goes over 200 yards passing and rushing, Cam,
250.
I don't know if there's any SFL team that can accept that many yards on both sides of the ball and still win a game. To me, St. Louis just needs to work on their defense a little bit and just get ready for next week. You can only win one game at a time, and next week is another chance.
And Gladiators just brutally outplayed today. Cochran, a couple of touchdowns. He was sort of that possession receiver for Tallahassee today. And another great game for Barry, 2.5 sacks as he now climbs to the top of the SFL sack leaders this week. Tallahassee won the game despite losing Jason Moffitt off their line early in the first half. Avon Sanchez was on that call, and St. Louis, it's rare you see an SFL team held under 200 yards of total offense, and Tallahassee's defense definitely now here in back-to-back weeks has been pretty solid for 7 of the 8 quarters, minus that fourth quarter when Atlanta caught fire. Well, Andy, obviously you were a big part of this game. The Vancouver Legion and the Dallas Roughnecks, the final game of the afternoon slate today, going to Texas. Vancouver riding a one-game win streak, I guess, but a pretty big one. Pretty big one, an overtime win. It felt like 2 games since the game was 2.5 hours long. But
it felt like 5.5.
Yeah, they beat San Antonio, and then they turn around and go to Texas. And Andy, take down another Texas team today as Dallas surprisingly came out flat and stayed flat today. Vancouver on the road gets the victory 24-13. In who you got, it was a 54-19 advantage for Dallas in the voting. And Vancouver making it done, getting it happen, or you know what I mean.
Making it done and getting it happen. The new motto for Vancouver Legion. I'm gonna put that up on my wall, Cam. No, it was a good game for us. I think this is another game that there were a lot of missed opportunities for Dallas. I mean, they come down the field on their opening drive. They're driving the ball well. We finally get a stop, and they kick. They're lining up to kick a field goal and doink off the uprights out of bounds. It's killer. Those type of things can really deflate your team. And so to start off like that, it just kind of sucked. But they're going to bounce back. Today was not a good example for this team. They'll be all right. But Vancouver, good job to my guys for getting the job done.
Bottom of the Western Conference now gets real interesting. Vancouver and Dallas and Oklahoma City are all 2-4. San Antonio's right behind them at 1-5. Sioux Falls plays tomorrow night. They potentially could fall to 2-4 if they cannot pull the big-time upset over Mexico City. We have to mention, and I know that the game of the week is running behind here because we've just had so much exciting action today, but Michael Trujillo, if you missed the game, sorry, it's not available on demand, at least the call, because it was a test game on Rabbit. But Michael Trujillo, the new commentator on the SFL landscape here, and I gotta say, man, I talked to him before the game. It was the first time he had ever called a football game. This dude was jacked up, and he was fantastic.
Yeah, I've never seen a guy get more excited for a 5-yard completion across the middle in my entire life. And it resonates with the fans. I was sitting on my couch, and I was like, it's the first quarter, and they're about to the other team's about to kick a field goal. I've never been more excited for them. Mike did a great job, and I sure hope, Cam, that we're going to have him on a game that will be seamlessly on demand on the Simulation FL page at some point in the near future.
Oh, I don't doubt that one bit. If there's one thing we know, we're definitely having a lot of fun in the Simulation Football League these days, and it just only continues. The last game on the docket in the SFL this afternoon, actually, I was thinking we had gone over it already. How could I forget? It was the main game of the day, Baltimore at Atlanta. And the Atlanta Swarm and Baltimore Crabs were neck and neck for most of the game. And then all of a sudden, Pick Six City. Here's a stat for you, Andy. Atlanta now has 4 pick sixes this season. No other team has more than one. And the Swarm get the victory today, 35-24.
Yeah, talk about a buzz, Cam. The Swarm are moving, and the pick sixes were incredible. Before that, in all honesty, me and Shane were kind of sitting there, and I was at least thinking to myself, I was like, this one could come down to one of the final couple plays. And then all of a sudden, bang, bang, 2 pick sixes, and the point differential is huge. And you're looking around going, what just happened? It was 35-24 at the end of everything when it was all said and done. And that's after Baltimore climbed back into it with a couple clutch throws from Matt South deep down the field. Baltimore would not give up. I think that was one thing that needs to be said about this game. That and the Crabs losing Josh Pockmeyer so early in the game had to hurt. But DeMar Woods, the rookie QB coming in for his first start, 3 touchdowns and 3 picks. Not bad, not bad. Obviously, you don't want the interceptions on the sheet, but you'll take them if you'll counter them with 3 touchdowns, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Woods, 31 of 39, looked really good in his debut, taking over from Malcolm Mandel, who was called up and out of the SFL after his great performance last week against Tallahassee. And this Atlanta team is really putting the pieces together. Ludacris, another huge day as well. For those of you waiting in the chat for the SFL Game of the Week, it's coming right around the corner, Houston and Alaska. The link to that game is, and there's actually a few people waiting in the chat room right now, but we've given you the link to that specific broadcast as we go over to a different network after the SFL Today show. Alaska and Houston coming up. Andy, this is the rematch of all rematches. Houston is wearing their Black Death uniforms tonight. I wonder why. They're so, and I'm just going to say it because I'm on my own network, they're so pissed about that Houston or about that playoff loss. I expect an all-out war here tonight.
Well, yeah, wouldn't you be pissed, Cam, if Alaska was able to do to Houston what they did to you? I mean, come on. This is a game that, I cannot wait for. I've had this circled on my calendar when I saw the SFL schedule come out. Had this game circled before the season started. So I'm pumped to see what Mighty and the Alaska Storm are bringing to take on DeMond and the Hyenas. And I think this is going to be a battle, Cam. This one could get very defensive, or it could be very high scoring. And either way, I think it's going to come down to the final frame. I think the fourth quarter will decide tonight's matchup.
All right, Andy. Well, we're ready to go from the Hyena Den Park in Houston. Thanks for being an analyst on the show, as always.
Of course. Anytime.
All right, everybody. Andy's off and running. He'll be in the chat, I'm sure, for the rest of the game. And we're all ready. From Houston, Texas, it's the SFL Game of the Week, Alaska and Houston, and it's coming up next here on the SFL Network. Stay tuned. The game won't be here on the SFL Today. Use the link we provided in the chat, or use the link on our Discord channel to make sure that you are there for the Game of the Week tonight. This has been a presentation of the SFL Network and the Simulation Football League. Game of the Week is next. This has been the SFL Today.